Hey guys, what's up? Producer engineer Alex Scott here with Consordini.com. Thanks for tuning in to another one of our videos. I wanted to do another kind of vlog style video today about another kind of piece of gear or class of pieces of gear that was one of the most daunting and intimidating things for me when I was just starting out as a recording engineer specifically, but also, this applies to producers and anybody who uses recording equipment, really. And that is the preamp. Preamps are very, very interesting devices. Like I said, when I was very first getting started as a recording engineer, they were one of the things that I would kind of read about and talk to older, more experienced engineers about, and very quickly realized that there's a certain amount of mystique about them, almost mysticism in a way, of how, the greatest preamplifier ever created is an Eve 1073, and even the best modern recreations really can't touch the quality of sound that you get out of one of the vintage modules, and really, you're going to want to pick one of those up at some point so you can really start doing some serious recording. And it's very easy to end up, just like with any other piece of gear, it's very easy to end up in this headspace of, oh man, I've got to know everything there is to know about this, or I have to have the most expensive thing or the most vintage thing or this one particular thing. Until I get that, I won't be able to make quality recordings. I won't be able to create good tracks. I won't be able to create great records until I get X, Y, or Z. And I wanted to do this video to completely dispel that myth and specifically focus on preamps, what they are, how they work, and just how worried you need to be about them, okay? So let's start with just talking a little bit about what exactly is a preamp. And in order to fully understand what exactly a preamp is, you have to think about how a microphone works from an electrical perspective, okay? So a microphone, in its essence, is a diaphragm, which is usually composed of a little thin piece of plastic, usually in a circle, and it usually has gold or something over it. And then it usually has some kind of a magnet element. And as sound hits this diaphragm and vibrates it, the magnet moves in and out of a coil, and that creates electrical current, pushing and pulling electrical current, which recreates the movement of the air. Hooray, we have sound in a way that can be understood as and processed as electricity, alternating current, right? That's what the waveform is. It's a little graph of what the air is doing, and the air movement to create that graph is being picked up and translated by the microphone. The only problem with this system is that a microphone, in and of itself, the vibrations are so minute and so little, and the diaphragm is moving such a small distance as it's being vibrated. When you turn that into current and it comes out the butt end of the microphone to go off on its journey to be recorded, it's very, very quiet. So back in the day when they were very first designing, microphones as we understand them today, they realized they would need a circuit to bring that current, bring that signal up to a volume that could be easily recorded. And the preamplifier, or preamp, was born. Okay, the earliest preamp designs utilized tubes, vacuum tubes, to bring the gain up, as amplifier stages, to bring the gain up to where we could easily record it and hear it. And then later on, solid state designs were introduced. And really, that's where you start to get into this world of mystique about these preamps, because each manufacturer and each designer who tackled this problem, our microphone's too quiet, how do we make it louder so we can record it? Each of them had to come up with a solution to that. And some people used tubes, especially the earlier designs. Some people used transformers. Some people used what we call op amps, or operational amplifiers, which are little integrated circuits which do things electrically. And they all have slightly different sound characteristics. They all impart a bit of a different timbre to the sound of the microphone. By in the process of bringing up that signal, they do it differently, and it sounds a little bit different. And so you can almost think of it like a natural EQ curve, kind of a little bit in a weird way. And very quickly, very early on, people started realizing that these different timbres and tones suited things differently. So you had people who were, back in the day, making large format recording consoles, the big, giant, super wide desks with all the faders and all the knobs and all the meters. And, companies like Neve, companies like SSL, companies like API, companies like Trident. And they tried to design their preamps to sound as good as possible on everything. And arguably, the most famous of these designs is the Neve Model 1073, designed by Rupert Neve in the mid to late 60s. And a lot of really classic records have been made on these Neve consoles. And because of that, and because he designed the preamps well to sound really good, they've attained this almost mythical status, like absolutely beyond legendary, of how good they sound. And this is where you start to cross over into this world of, you meet these guys, these older engineers, these older producers who've been around for a really long time. They've used all different kinds of gear. You know, they're maybe very successful or somewhat successful, so they've gotten to work with some of this vintage stuff. And they will tell you, if you're asking them about preamps, you know, hey, I'm a brand new recording engineer, I'm just getting into it. What do you think about preamps? And that immediately will trigger a 9-hour conversation, if you let it, of, oh man, well, the Tridents have, you know, they have kind of a sweet edge to them and a nice controlled low end. And then there's the Telefunken V676, which is the solid state incarnation of the V76, and blah, 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 blah. And they'll just go on, and everybody's got an opinion about their favorite preamp and how to use it and what it sounds like and why it's the best. But invariably, it's always something incredibly old, incredibly rare, and incredibly expensive. And again, you can get sucked into this mindset of going, well, until I own that, I guess I really can't make a serious recording. And that's not true. It's just not, okay? All basic recording interfaces nowadays, if you know, again, if you're just getting started out, you most likely have like a Behringer or a Focusrite or something like that. Something that you can plug in a mic and then record it onto your computer, whether you're a singer-songwriter or a rapper or whatever. You're just recording your own vocals. Maybe you're recording yourself playing acoustic guitar or piano or something, and you get a little box that plugs into your computer, plug a mic into the box, and you're rolling. That's already a preamp. And because of the level of manufacturing and the level of design capability that we have nowadays, those preamps are fine. They sound fine. Don't ever let anybody tell you otherwise, okay? Now, can the argument be made that when you're getting really serious, the better quality preamp you have, the better your recording is going to sound? Kind of, a little bit, but I started with those really basic, cheap, built-in interface preamps that don't have transformers or tubes or anything fancy in them. And I started with those. And I started recording with those. And then now, as I've moved on in my career, I'm now a full-time mixing engineer, recording engineer, record producer, all this stuff. I do it for a living. I do have a number of different preamps. You can see behind me, I've got a pair of tube preamps and a pair of Joe Meek preamps just out of frame over here. I do have a pair of Neve 1073 clones. They're not original or vintage ones, but it's the same circuit from a modern manufacturer. I have preamps from Audient. I have a number of different options because are there tonal differences? Yes, there are. Neve tends to have a really fat, rich bottom end, kind of a crispy top end. Whereas something like an old vintage tube preamp might be a little bit more euphonic or sweet sounding. It's not even really stuff that can be explained in like, oh, there's a bump at some frequency or whatever. It's just a general vibe, and you do have to listen to them and use them to get to know what that sound is and whether or not you like it. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of guys out there who will try to tell you that it makes all the difference in the world and you can't get a quality recording unless you have some incredible legendary preamp. And it's just not true. It just plain isn't. The preamps built into these modern interfaces are fine. They might not have a lot of character to them or like vibe or whatever, or they might not impart much of a sound. But the bottom line is, you plug a mic into it, it's going to make the electrical signal from the mic louder so that you can record it. And it's going to do so in such a way that isn't affecting the quality of the signal. It's not making it sound worse. It might not, again, add all this mojo to it to make it sound super cool or unique. But even then, when you start running stuff through a vintage Neve, is the difference realistically that huge? Not really. To us, as recording engineers, yes, absolutely, you can hear a bit of a difference. When I run something through a very boring, quote-unquote, sounding preamp, like a built-in interface preamp, and then I run the same signal through a Neve, yeah, it accentuates the top, it accentuates the low end, it sculpts the sound a little bit, and it sounds a little bit better. It definitely sounds a little bit different. Better is always a subjective thing. But at the end of the day, you're going to get so much more out of the quality of your recordings by following the basic tenets of recording: mic placement, quality of the instrument, quality of the performance on that instrument. If you sit an incredible drummer down at a mediocre drum kit that's well taken care of and in tune, and you put a pretty cheap kind of whatever microphone in front of it, and you run it into a boring old Behringer or Focusrite interface preamp, you're going to get a great sounding drum recording because he's an awesome drummer playing an instrument that's at least well maintained. Obviously, the better the kit is, there you're going to be in even better territory. But I would still do a session with some legendary drummer like Vinny Cayuta on a great kit, and then have what most people would consider cheap or junky microphones and not great preamps. I'm going to get 1,000 times better of a sounding of a recording doing that than taking a 6th grade kid who just started learning how to hit a snare drum on a $10,000 drum kit through a vintage Neumann, $30,000 microphone into an original Neve whole console that cost $250,000. That's going to sound like crap because the performance isn't good. Okay? The person performing the music doesn't necessarily know how to perform it to sound its best. That's not to rag on little kids or something. That's just any circumstance where you have somebody, the better the performance is, the better the recording is going to be. And that's going to make all the difference in the world. So when you find yourself looking through magazines, or you find yourself talking to other producers and engineers and going, oh man, I really feel like I can't do anything right or get any good quality recordings, or I'm listening back to what I am recording and it feels like something's missing. Maybe I need to go spend $15,000 on preamps. No, you don't. Look at your performance, first of all. Second of all, look at your instrument. Third of all, look at the room you're recording it in. If you have your drums in a laundry room or a kitchen or something, they're not going to sound great. You want to have a decent a space with decent acoustics to be recording in. And those three things, that is 95% of your battle. After that, yeah, really high-end microphones sound nominally better than cheaper microphones. Sure. Really expensive, fancy vintage preamps sound a little bit better or even just a little bit different than cheaper preamps. But that is if you've got the mic in the right place and it's on a great player, on a great instrument, in a great sounding room, it really doesn't matter what preamp you're using. It doesn't even matter as much what microphone you're using. Placement of the microphone is very important as well, but again, great player, great instrument, great space, put the microphone in the right spot, you've won 95% of the battle right there. And just because you go out and invest all this money in a really expensive set of preamplifiers or a really expensive set of microphones or compressors or any of this stuff, it's not inherently going to make your recording sound better if what you're actually recording doesn't sound good to begin with. So if you find yourself in your studio and you feel like something's lacking, look at those elements: the room, the player, the instrument, for a very long time before you start worrying about upgrading your preamps. Now, final note, gear can be inspiring. Just the fact that I have these Neve clones right here with the cool old vintage red knob that's a Neve knob, and I can go over and twist it and feel the click of the stepped pot and all this stuff. Yeah, I like that. Do they sound great? Of course they sound great. They're Neve preamps. They have 2 giant iron transformers in them. They're awesome. I use them all the time. But at the same time, I wouldn't sit in here going, shut it down, sell everything. I don't own a Neve, so therefore I'll never get a great recording. That's the wrong way to think about it. Okay? But, just my thought, just my opinion. I'm sure there's guys out there who will disagree with me. But, I meet a lot of people who restrict themselves and who put this mental block on themselves and say, I can't do X, Y, or Z, or I can't get my records to sound great until I own this expensive, fancy thing. And it annoys the heck out of me because it's just not true. You guys can be getting incredible recordings using very rudimentary equipment. You just have to know how to use it, and you have to be recording things that sound good in the first place. Okay? So, if you guys have any of your own thoughts or comments on this topic, your favorite preamps or your favorite cheap preamps or anything like that, definitely join the conversation in the comments down below. We always appreciate hearing you guys' input. Again, my name is Alex Scott with Consordini.com. I hope you guys enjoyed my little preamp rant here today, and we will see you in the next video.